Hi everyone, it's been a while between videos. Haven't been doing a great deal of shooting lately. I've been doing, a little, but nothing too much. So I thought today I'd talk about a cartridge that I'm currently developing. This one is the 6.5 PRC necked up to 7mm. So it's a 6.5-7 PRC, which is gaining some momentum in F-class circles at the moment, particularly in the United States, and slowly catching on here in Australia. Now, before you'll see 5 different cartridges. I'll just run through them quickly so you know what you're looking at. On the far left here, this is a 7mm saum improved. The second one is a 284 Shaheen. The third one, this is one of the pieces of brass I'm currently running through. This is the 6.5 PRC necked up to 7mm. On the right, it is the same cartridge. It's a 6.5 PRC necked up, but this one's virgin brass. This has not been fired yet. I'll show why a little later in the video as to why I've got that piece there. And the one on the far right is also 6.5 PRC necked up to 7mm. This one is my dummy round for finding the lands when I'm looking to take measurements and work out my bullet seating depth, jam, jump, etc. So why am I running this? Well, a couple of reasons. Going back to the 284 Shaheen here, this is one I've been shooting for a few years now, and I am very, very happy with it. It does shoot very, very well. Accuracy is not an issue. This is Peterson brass, not Lapua. I have a custom reamer that was spec'd to run Peterson brass. The dimensions of the Peterson brass, internal dimensions, there's a bit more brass at the base of the case compared to Lapua. And also the neck tends to be a little thicker as well. So I spec'd out a custom reamer to run the Peterson brass. Been very happy with it, but in the last 18 months or so, there's been a dry up of 284 brass around the world. Lapua, who are probably the biggest manufacturer of 284 brass, well, not probably, they are. You've got the old 6.5 284 brass, which a lot of shooters neck up to 7mm. And then more recently, Lapua came out with straight 284 brass. Well, they've put that's all on hold at the moment because of the war in the Ukraine. So 284 brass supplies, very, very hard to find. Now I do have some Peterson brass in reserve. However, when the PRC became an option, it's something I started to and ah and think about. When the 6.5 PRC came out several years ago as the 6.5 variant, I looked at it and just thought, nah, move on. Pretty happy with the 284. I didn't really think about the potential of the 6.5 PRC if it was necked up to 7mm. But with the dry up of 284 brass, being very, very hard to find these days, unless you're sitting on a stockpile of it, you probably need to consider other options. Now, other options include, over on the far left, the saum, the short action ultra magnum. However, brass availability for the saum is also very, very difficult to come by. Norma and ADG would be the 2 primary manufacturers of saum brass out there. I think Bertram brass also do saum, but I've never used Bertram brass. For me, all the guys I know that shoot a 7mm saum or an improved version of running Norma. This here is ADG brass. Again, I think I might have done a video on this one some time ago. I was really trying to get the Berger 190 grain hybrids to run in this 7mm saum improved case, but the Berger 190s for life nor money would not shoot. My 6GT comfortably outshot this cartridge running a 7mm 190 grain bullet. So this is a cartridge I'm going to go back to in 2024 in a few months' time, but I'm going to run my primary 7mm bullet in it, which is a 184 grain Berger hybrid. I also run the Berger 184 grain hybrid in the Shaheen, and I'm also running it in the PRC. So going back to the PRC, there's a couple of variants of this one out there. There's the straight necked up version, which is what I'm running, and you've also got another version, the 7FCP, developed by Brian Blake in the United States. The 7FCP, key difference with that one, Brian Blake is shortening the neck considerably on it, pushing the shoulders forward and blowing the shoulders out to create more case capacity. What Brian's version, the 7FCP, is designed to do is to match the case capacity of the standard 7mm saum. Now this one's improved. This one's probably got, I haven't actually done a water measurement. I suspect with the shoulders blown from 30 degrees out to 40, although I have, with mine, created a slightly longer neck. But I suspect I've probably got an extra 1.5 grains of case capacity with this version. Your 284 Shaheen is the small one here. Whilst it's longer, it's a narrower case running a standard bolt face, whereas the PRC is running your Magnum bolt face. I think it's a 532 bolt face. And the saum, that's a little fatter again. That's like a 550 or 550 bolt face or thereabouts. So yeah, short and fat. Short, not quite as fat, and this one's been on a bit of a diet. So the case capacity of the Shaheen, if you were to fill this with water, this comes to about 67 grains of water capacity. The PRC probably comes in around 1 grain a head. It's very, very close. I think it's about 68 grains. This is the second iteration of the PRC that I'm actually trialling. The first variation, I blew the shoulders out to 40 degrees like the saum. I straightened up the sidewalls slightly, but there was a couple of issues with my reamer spec, a couple of things I didn't think about, and that experiment was a expensive failure because I had custom reamer, custom dies, etc. So annoying, yes. Did I learn a lot? Yes, I did. To the point where I've just gone with a straight necked up version. Couple of things you've got to account for with it to stay on top of things. By necking up the PRC from 6.5 to 7mm, your first firing will be fine. However, what it's going to do from the brass flow coming forward through the case, it is, and what it did with my first version, the improved version, which was a failure, it leaves a donut. It forms a donut on the inside of the case neck. The problem there is, depending on the free bore you've spec'd or that your gunsmith has on a reamer, or if you've got your own like I have, a custom reamer, you may not have enough free bore to seat the bullet above the donut. And that's the problem I ran into. I was running a fairly short free bore for the 184 grain hybrids, and when I tried to seat the bullet, it hit the donut and the bullet just wouldn't go any further until I realised what the problem was. The way to get around the donut is to neck turn the brass. So the piece here on the right, second from right, this is neck turn. So what I'm doing is running it through a 7mm expander mandrel, and then I'm neck turning the brass. I'm taking a couple of thou off it, and you'll see here as well, I'm also cutting well into the shoulder. This is on the advice of my gunsmith to prevent the donut from forming. If you neck turn and cut into the shoulder, when that brass flows forward, because you've cut into the shoulder, that's where that brass flow is going to go. So you're eliminating the donut problem by doing that. It is more prep work, and this is the only cartridge I neck turn for. The Shaheen I don't neck turn, the Saam I don't neck turn, and my 6mm GT, I haven't got one of those cases here, it's just out of reach. I don't neck turn the GT either. I'm generally not a fan of it, and I generally haven't found it to be a noticeable improvement in accuracy. However, for the purposes of this PRC, to avoid the problems of donuts and seating bullets, neck turning it is beneficial. So going back to this PRC, this necked up version was sort of the brainchild of Alex Wheeler. He's a very well renowned and respected gunsmith in the United States. Very, very popular with the bench rest crowd over there. But when he came up with the idea of just necking up the PRC, it was in, I think he consulted with a couple of F-class shooters that were looking at alternatives to the 284, where they could run slightly higher pressures and not pay the penalty with brass life. If the 284 has a weakness, it's because you're running the standard case head with a slightly fatter body. The case head doesn't like pressure. So if you're running hot loads, your primer pockets are the first thing that's going to suffer. And that's been the probably the biggest complaint about the 6.5 to 284 Lapua brass. That was sort of the only real match grade brass available for many years up until more recent times with the 284. The primer pockets, particularly with faster powders like ADI 2209, which is H4350, if you're running a stout load, you'll open the primer pockets up pretty quickly. And I've read reports, seen people do it where they're trying to hot rod this 284 to do something that it's not designed to do. You're up in node with this one realistically, and I don't run my Shaheen hot at all. Like, I'm running with the 184 grain hybrids, I'm running at 2780 feet per second. Now it'll hold the X-ring at 1,000 yards. And that is absolutely fine. That's exactly what I want it to do. I was running it a little bit quicker with a slower powder with 2213 shortcut, which is H4831 shortcut for anyone in the US watching this or elsewhere that may have access to that powder. 2213 shortcut here. This was shooting really, really good for probably 12 months, running around 2830 feet per second. And it was achieving some really good groups, some really good scores. But then it just seemed it went out of tune earlier this year, and I couldn't get the tune back with it. My gunsmith and I looked over this for some time. The load data was still really good. I was achieving sort of extreme spreads of 11, 12 feet per second over 12 shots with SDs in the low threes, which for all intents and purposes was really good. But regardless of playing around with bullet seating depth and adjusting the tuner settings on my rifle, could not get it to group the same way it sort of originally did. So I switched over to 2209, guessed a powder charge. I ran two different powder charges at 800 meters. They both shot clean 60s, and I just split the difference. So it's a pretty mild load. It's 50.1 grains. That's the load I run of 2209 with a 184 hybrid. It's running at 2780. I've got an extreme spread of 9 or 10 feet per second over 12 shots with an SD of about 3, and it's holding the X-ring now at 1,000 yards. The PRC, however, this one runs a little quicker. I'm not running this to, I guess, as fast as it can go. This brass, compared to the 284, the 6.5 PRC, this one was designed to run pretty hard if you want it to. I'm not saying you should, but if you want it to, it can run pretty hard. I think initially the intention for the 6.5 PRC was to sort of provide a high-powered option for PRS shooters, to give them, a supercharged version of a 6.5 Creedmoor in the PRS game. Now, if you're running this as a straight 6.5, well, guess what? It's also going to torch your barrel very, very quickly. If you're pushing it at the speeds that it is capable of. You can push it up around 3,100 feet with a 140 grain projectile. Necking it up to 7 millimeters, and running a 180 or a 184, I'm running this at 2840 feet per second with the 184 hybrids, again using ADI 2209 powder, running just below 53 grains, about 52.7. It's giving me awesome ESs and SDs, and it seems to be where the accuracy node is with that powder. I tried 2213 shortcut briefly again. Now you can get it up to 2900 feet quite comfortably, but it wasn't shooting there. And if it's not shooting there, I'm not going to run it there. So switching back to 09, the ES, the SDs came down, and sure enough, the group size has also shrunk a lot. I'm just in the final stages now of load development. I'm happy with the powder. I'm happy with the tuner setting I've got on my rifle. Where I'm at the moment is finalising seating depth. Where I've found with the 184 grain hybrid bullet in, like for example with the Shaheen here, that bullet likes a 30 thou jump. And it's like that jump in 2 barrels. When I ran a 280 Ackley improved a few years ago, 30 thou jump again was very, very good. 30 thou jump in the PRC, it's good, it's not brilliant. 25 thou jump's looking quite tight, so that 5 thou difference there at around 25 thou, it's looking quite tight. Last weekend at 500 metres it shot a really flat waterline, and in conditions where the wind was a little flicky, mirage was heavy, I was pretty happy with the group it produced. The other the other seating depth rather that I trialled last week, which showed promise, was a 100 thou jump. And you might ask yourself, why jump it that far? My reasoning behind that one was just doing a little bit of research out there on bullet seating depths, where people are finding success with various cartridges with jumping hybrid bullets. Now, it's not to say that you always have to jump a hybrid bullet. You can jam them, and I know people who jam them and have great success. But I do prefer jumping. The 100 thou jump, the theory behind that one comes from a couple of articles I've seen and interviews with some very well-renowned PRS shooters in the United States, and they're not shooting the necked up PRC, they're shooting things like 6.5 Creedmoors or 6mm dashes, 6.5 by 47 Lapuas and so forth. But I have seen reports now of some of these 6mm and 6.5 cartridges having very good success with large jumps from sort of like 80 thou back to around 120 thou. So I thought, for argument's sake, I'll try a 100 thou jump and see what it does. And there may be some truth behind that jump. Again, it actually shot very well at 500 metres last week. My first 3 shots, I had a 5-round group. My first 3 shots were in the X ring. I had an X just shy of a pinhole. The next shot was a pinhole, so I had 2 shots right on top of each other there. The third shot was an X just below the pinhole, and then I had a wind condition change, which I deliberately shot on. I had a right to left wind for the first 3 shots, and then it swung to left to right, just being a bit flicky. The condition wasn't coming back to me, so I thought, stuff it. Let's just see if this thing actually has some consistency in shooting on a different wind condition. So I pulled the trigger, and sure enough, I got a 5 out to the right and slightly low. I came up a 1/4 minute hot in elevation and a 1/4 minute left, and that 5th shot was back in the X ring where the other 3 were. After that change in wind condition. So that's given me reason to believe that there may be some credence to behind running the larger jump. So my plan for the next time I shoot, hopefully this weekend, subject to weather. Weather in Sydney lately has been pretty crazy this week with storms, hail, sunshine, everything's sort of been thrown in there. We'll see how we go, whether I can put that jump to the test again. So I'm going to run the 25 thou jump for a stage, and I'm going to run the 100 thou jump for the second stage, and hopefully from there make a decision, see which one looks more consistent. I'll have to really pay attention to the wind. I think the wind forecast for Saturday in Sydney at my local range, it's not a favourable wind. It is a wind that can be quite choppy and quite switchy, so conditions will not be great. So under ideal circumstances, I'd like to shoot in quite mild conditions to test it, to see if there's a noticeable difference between the two seeding depths. Because when it's wild and choppy, it does add a bit more sort of variance to the results you might get. So moving forward with the PRC, I'm liking it so far. The brass is holding up well so far. There is a little more prep involved with the neck turn. I am finding after shooting as well, just keeping an eye. I think after 6 firings now, I have had to trim the brass. You do need to stay on top of that. Just make sure you've got everything nice and consistent. And once I've sort of cleaned it, annealed it, resized it, etc., I will just run it over the neck turn again, just to see if there's any material sort of flowing forward into the neck that needs to be turned off, because I do want to keep these necks, the neck wall consistency has to be excellent. You don't want variation in your ammunition. In the world of F-class, if you're dropping shots, you want the reason. If you're dropping shots, the only reason should be you. It shouldn't be the gun, it shouldn't be your ammunition, it shouldn't be your equipment. You should be the deciding factor whether you're dropping shots or not the ammunition. So again, it comes back to brass prep and consistency in prep. Now, one other issue I'll talk about with this cartridge, because it's new in being necked up to 7 mils and so forth, there's been a little bit of confusion out there. Some people have asked, well, why not shoot a 7mm PRC? A 7mm PRC is completely different from the 6.5. Whereas this one runs around 68 grains of water capacity. Your 7 PRC, it's a bit taller. The 7 PRC probably more closely, in terms of case capacity, more closely resembles a 7mm WSM or a 300 WSM Winchester Short Magnum. Up around, I think, 80... anywhere between 82 and I think maybe up to 84 grains of water capacity, so quite a bit more volume. Different case altogether. And you could run a 7 PRC, however, just be aware, as a 7mm, it is going to torch the barrel very quickly, to the point where you might be lucky to get, in F-class shooting, particularly if you're a fast string shooter, you might be looking at a new barrel after 800 rounds. If you've got access to really slow cold burning powders, like some of the Vitavori powders, you might get a touch more. You might go close to 1,000 rounds, maybe. That's just a guess though. So in terms of case volume and everything, the PRC, like the 284, it hits a bit of a sweet spot. As I said, I'm running mine at around 2840. There are people running it, I've seen this pushed up over 2900. It will do it. I haven't really seen it shoot well at those velocities though. So bear that in mind. Just because it will run over 2900 feet per second with your 180 grain sort of bullets doesn't mean you should. Always chase the accuracy rather than the velocity. That's my sort of theory behind when I'm developing a load. If I find a load's holding that X-ring nice and tight at a particular powder charge, I'm stopping. I'm not going to look for max sort of pressure. Again, you need to come up with a powder charge that's going to get you through all season. That's winter, autumn, summer, spring, etc. Obviously summers here in Australia get pretty hot, and running a powder like 2209, which is the fastest powder I would consider running in this, I don't want to be running hot 09 loads, because I'm not looking to, I don't want to be shooting an F-class match and having sticky bolt lifts from running a hot load and encountering pressure once the barrel and everything sort of heats up. I don't want that. I want a nice mild load that's going to be nice and consistent throughout the course of fire over a multiple day match, like a King's State match, which is coming up next month at Malabar in New South Wales, and it's not going to give me any headaches. One thing about this case that people have discovered, and it comes back to the saami spec, I'll talk about this one for a couple of minutes, is clickers. What's a clicker? A clicker is effectively, once your brass is being fired in the chamber and you are lifting the bolt on extracting that case, that bolt's sort of coming probably 90% of the way up and it's hitting the roller cam, and at that point it gets sticky, like it doesn't want to move, and you've got to use a bit more force, and you'll hear that sort of, as you're using that force, it'll go click, and then you'll pull the bolt back and extract the brass. That is from the brass expanding inside the chamber. If everyone watching this video understands the concept of fire forming, etc., once a brass cartridge with a projectile in it has been fired and you've got somewhere in the vicinity of 60,000 pounds of pressure running up its backside, that brass is going to change inside the chamber. It is going to flow forward, and depending on the specs of the chamber, the brass will flow out and forward, typically. Where people are coming unstuck is the saami spec for the 6.5 PRC brass was probably spec'd incorrectly in hindsight. So when die manufacturers started manufacturing their reloading dies for the 6.5 PRC, and some of the guys shooting the necked up 7mm version like I am have run into this, those dies are not sizing it's almost the web, it's almost the base of the case. It's the 200 line. I think on the video you might be able to just see it. See this shiny line running around the base? That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what's referred to as the 0.200 line on a reamer print. And this is the part of the case where the brass is, under most circumstances, is not being sized enough. And because it's not being sized enough, that's why people are getting clickers when after, depending how hard they're running, depending on the powder, slower powders produce less pressure, etc. A lot of them, however, are running into clickers at some point. Again, Alex Wheeler discovered this after a little bit and respec'd his original reamer design at the 200 line. He added another 3 thou of clearance to it. So he was running initially a 0.532 spec at the 200 line. That wasn't sufficient. What he did was change his reamer print to a 535 to account for the expansion at the 200 line. So all things being equal, people shouldn't get clickers. Some still are. I do know some people are still getting clickers with that adjusted reamer spec. Again, once you've got a clicker, you're not getting rid of it. The only way to get rid of it is using a resizing die that is built, designed properly to account for it. What I'm running at the moment is the Micron Precision resizing die from Bullet Central, and that one at the moment seems to size, well, for me, the most. Eric Cortina, however, has his own die. He actually has 2. Eric's die, I suspect, from what I understand, sizes a little bit more than the Bullet Central Micron Precision die. Now, the Bullet Central Micron Precision die is largely working for me at the moment. I am avoiding clickers at the moment, but the measurements I'm getting from the brass, it's sort of on the edge. If I was running a hotter load, like if I was running north of 53 grains of 2209 and the pressure spike goes up, then I'm going to certainly be hitting this 200 line a bit harder than what I currently am, and that clicker may very well return. Eric's die, and I've got one coming actually at the moment, just shipped from the US overnight. I should have that in my hands early next week. We'll see. Some people have actually complained that Eric's die sizes too tightly. He's got one spec'd for the old 532 line at the 200 line here. And he also has one now, a revision that he's made for chambers cut with a 535 reamer. Now I've gone with the tighter one because I want to make sure I stay on top and of the clicker issue and never ever experience them. I think with the reamer I've got, my reamer, I spec'd it through JGS at 0.5355. Coupled with Eric's die, I believe should result in me not experiencing any clickers at all whilst shooting this cartridge. I guess, you know, we'll see what happens down the track once I get that die and can use it a few times, and we'll see. At the moment, I've been pretty happy with the Micron Precision from Bullet Central. It was very expensive. However, it is currently working and is doing its job, and that line you can see there, that is that die actually sizing that part of the case. That's why you see that mark there. Normally you'd think, well, that's where case head separation would start to occur, but in this particular case, that's the 200 line being sized by the Bullet Central resizing die. That's why you see that shiny mark. So that's probably one of the other main things to consider with this case. I mean, one, we've spoke about it earlier, is the donut, and then the second one is the resizing issue around the 200 line and having a resizing die that's appropriately spec'd. As far as bullet seating is concerned, Bullet Central again offer a seating die for this. It is very expensive. I'm not actually using it. I just had my gunsmith, I bought a Forster micrometer seater, which was quite a bit cheaper. Excellent quality though, being a Forster micrometer bullet seater. I just bought a 7mm 08 die and my gunsmith just ran the reamer through it. So I have no issue at all seating bullets, as you can see on the right here. It seats them absolutely fine. So yeah, I think probably leave that video there. If anyone's sort of got any questions around this, feel free to post them up and ask. But hope you found this informative. If you are in the F-class game and umming and ahhing about whether to neck the PRC up to 7mm and give it a go, hopefully this video helps explain some of the things you'll need to have a bit of a think about in order to get it to work properly. Like any new sort of Wildcat cartridge that's being developed, there's some learnings and things to take into account. And hopefully, you know, I'm one of the early sort of, in Australia, one of the early pioneers of this. I've got a couple of friends. I've got one friend shooting this cartridge in the same sort of format as I currently am, and I know another couple of guys that have got the Brian Blake FCP version, and they've had a couple of issues with theirs as well. So little things to sort of iron out and fine tune, but once these issues get ironed out and fine tuned in years to come, I think this case will possibly overtake the 284 in terms of popularity. I think having Lapua brass as an option. And the other one, just before I finalise this, ADG are bringing out now straight, well, 6.5 PRC brass necked up to 7mm. It's already necked up. That alone will alleviate the issue to the requirement to neck turn. If you were thinking about, neck turning's a pain, ADG have already sort of anticipated that now. I think they see the ADG guys, you know, they're target shooters first and foremost. I think they see the potential of it, and coming out with that version that's already necked up, good to go, that's one process right there that you're not going to have to worry about, and I actually would be keen to actually try that brass if and when it becomes available in Australia. So, food for thought. Yeah, hope you found the video interesting, and I'll might look to sort of post back again once I can finalise the bullet seating depth, and yeah, see how this thing runs moving forward. Thanks everyone, bye.